find that they must look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that. Where you find that they must look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Thank you for staying with us. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust TV, and we are now moving to discussions on some of the major stories that made it into the front pages of the newspapers this morning. And we have in the studio Mukhtar Suleiman, a public affairs analyst, and Happy New Year, and good to have you.
Thank you. Welcome to the first Monday of the year.
First Monday of the year.
Yeah,
and,
it's been a good first Monday of the year, first Monday of the month.
Exactly.
We hope for the best.
Exactly.
First day of the week.
Wow. So, this morning, of course, all the papers are inundated with one major story, and that's expectedly. You know, when Obasanjo sneezes, the country catches cold, literally.
Yeah,
so the endorsement, and of course, you can see the action from almost everywhere. APC Tinubu kick as Obasanjo backs Obi. That's the front page of Daily Trust this morning. And then we have APC campaign saying that it is a worthless endorsement. PDP says that they don't care about an individual endorsement. It is rather that of the Nigerians, that which they claim to have. And Obasanjo, of course, marshaled out reasons why he said Obi is the best. And then, of course, he, as usual, gave some knocks to President Buhari. It is captured here as saying, him saying Nigeria is hell on earth under Buhari. So let's talk about the endorsement. Is this something surprising to you? Looking at, Obasanjo in 2019 actually backed Atiku.
Yes.
And then
2015 backed Buhari.
2015 he backed Buhari. And even this year, in August last year, when Tinubu led a large delegation of APC stalwarts to visit him, a lot of people felt he may come their way. So was this really, did you see this coming?
Honestly, I didn't see this coming, if I'm being honest. This was a sort of like a shock yesterday. But one of the most important things we need to note from the letter he wrote was, it's not really saying, I am fielding you a candidate. If we look at, and before I even continue speaking, I like doing this, of course, need a disclaimer. I'm not campaigning for anybody. I'm not supporting Obasanjo's letter. I'm just speaking to the content and context from within which I understand it. So I do not see him in any way trying to say, oh, this is your, he even said it outrightly. I'm not saying there's a messiah, but he pointed out reasons, cogent reasons, why he felt the concept of Emilokon should not be at the fore of our politics, and the idea of I have paid my dues should not be at the fore of our politics. It should be based on competencies, agility to perform, sound health and sound mind. So some of this, I think we need to look at it from the angle of Obasanjo does not care if Peter Obi loses or he wins at the end of the day. From what I understand from the letter, his own is just that I have told you that this is not the best time for us to vote these people into office. But if you go ahead and do that, I will be disappointed, but at the end of the day, it is still the voice of Nigerians, of course. But I think that's the content and context from within which his letter was coming from. And I think if we sit down properly and read that letter, I read it at length yesterday night, I read it again this morning. I had a very good feeling it was going to be a topic of conversation. So it's something that we really need to look inward and reflect. This is 2023, and the year we've been discussing this back to back since last year, and then we're here now.
But,
so what would be the matrix for us to decide who we're going to pick as the next president? So I think that's somewhat of what Obasanjo was trying to do. But then again, we'll see how it goes.
But it's like you are understating the import of that letter, especially Obasanjo's posture. If you read it, he's like, of course, taking a decision sort of, or strong recommendations to what you call, the youth, of course. He said, and having reviewed leadership performance and challenges of the country, and now saying this. And I noted something, I don't know if you do. He's saying, calling Peter Obi that a mentee, and of course he's saying that he's somebody you can squeeze his ears and all that if he goes wrong. Don't you think that this is Obasanjo, as some of his critics will say, the father figure always trying to come out and decide for the country?
I think we need to understand that politics has transcended the whole idea of people controlling territorial spaces with the evolution of how our electioneering process is now. So even if Obasanjo says, go forth and vote Peter Obi, does not necessarily mean that's going to translate in the polls. We've seen this play out severally. It sort of played out in 2019 when he endorsed Atiku, and still didn't translate to when people went to cast their franchise. So we need to be realistic with how things are. I'm not trying to underrate the potency of the letter he wrote and the weight and the command that Obasanjo has. Of course, he was our first democratically elected president after in 1999. So I'm not trying to underrate him in any way. But we also need to be realistic that those times where we say politicians control certain territorial votes, we are fast moving out of that. I don't see that playing out strongly. It might play out, but not as effectively as it has played out in the past elections. So we also need to look at that as a reality. And Obasanjo being a father figure and as a way of saying he's trying to impose Peter Obi so he can control the government, well, the man is old, he's frail himself. If Peter Obi wins, it will not be because Obasanjo endorsed him or Obasanjo did not endorse him. That's the way I'm going to look at it.
So you agree that it is worthless endorsement?
No.
Okay, so...
No, please don't. I'm not saying it's a worthless endorsement.
Okay.
When you say worthless endorsement, it makes it sound like...
Okay, it's something that will not have any impact.
Let me change.
I think it will have limited impact to how the elections are going to turn out.
Okay, so I think the opposition, or rather the opposition and the ruling party also shares, this same sentiment of, in fact, they claim that his letter and his position does not hold any water.
Sorry, before you go,
okay.
just the first part of what you've just stated. I'm not saying the reason I said if Peter Obi wins, it will not be a testament of what Obasanjo says. It's just for us to understand that Obasanjo does not necessarily control the whole of Nigeria. Nigeria is a country of over 200 million people, so he has his own small space, but there are pockets of other variables that are going to come together for whosoever it is that is going to win the general election. But you can go ahead, please.
Okay, so don't you think it's sort of a double standard now for the PDP and the APC? I mean, Allah Abdulaziz, we saw in 2019, the PDP didn't have a problem with Obasanjo, adopting or endorsing their candidates. And in 2015, the APC didn't have a problem, with the former president endorsing their candidates. But here we are, both parties saying, look, you can't even win your polling unit, and you're coming out to endorse somebody who obviously cannot even win his state, according to them. So don't you think it is double standard?
Yeah, just to even also add to that, and the Daily Trust story, which the details is on page 5, actually chronicles how all these candidates had visited Obasanjo. Atiku was there in February last year.
Exactly.
Tinubu was there on August 17 this year. Still last year. And of course, Peter Obi had been there like twice, according to the records. And even Konkoso was there on May 20 last year. So if you all went to this man and then you are now saying that
why
the
are
man
you now rubbishing
his
open letter?
He's not. I'm not saying that. That's why I said I'm not going to underestimate the command that he has. But again, whosoever is going to emerge the winner of the 2023 election will not be solely because, that's the point I want to make. It will not be solely because Obasanjo endorsed said person. Because the honest truth of the matter is, if he had endorsed, say, any of the other candidates, there would have been backlash from LP, backlash from the other party that is not endorsed. So it's normal. It's politics politicking. So I think it's the content of the letter spoke to the realities of what we have today in Nigeria and how pathetic things are, and why what we need to look out for has to transcend some of the mundane things that we've always looked out for as to how we pick who becomes the president or who becomes the senators and all of that. We need to look out for more sound minds. We need to look for somebody that is subject to be held accountable. We cannot have people who have propensity of being a dictator in a democracy. And that was one of the points he was trying to make about Peter Obi being a needle that can wave to any side of the state. Not because Peter Obi will be a pushover. Of course, we've read the record of how he was when he was the governor of Anambra State. So again, I am not campaigning for the man. I want to say this very, very outrightly. I'm not campaigning for the man, but I'm just trying to make it to the context and content of that letter that Obasanjo wrote.
Okay, before we leave this issue, let me read out these tweets, done yesterday by Festus Keyamo, one of the spokesperson of the Tinubu campaign, and he says, and I quote, "Quite within OBJ's right to endorse anyone, but bad for PDP in two ways. One, Atiku's former boss does not think he deserves to be president this time around. Two, the little support OBJ gave PDP in 2019 and they failed, he has taken that away to LP. No effect at all on on Tinubu. So now, talking of PDP, do you agree with Kemo, or do you think that this will, because PDP has been struggling, even on the front page of Trust of the paper this morning, there's a story, actually an analysis on the crisis still rocking the party just less than 2 months to the election. How do you see PDP recovering from all these things?
Well, I said this last year when this whole brouhaha started with the G5 governors, even before they became G5, when it was just Wiki, that if this was not nipped in the bud at that time, it's going to translate into a very big issue. But if they allow it to drag all the way to January 2023, and this is where we are now. They've allowed it to drag for as long as it is. We got news reports over the weekend that they were going to openly back Tinubu at some point, although Wiki doing one of his projects commissioning, of course, that's where we always hear his voice. He said that that was not true. And as of yesterday night, we had Festus Keyamo also come out to say the party is distancing themselves from the G5 governors as well. So PDP is in for it right now. Obasanjo, of course, has his own influence that he gave them in 2019, and that is still in pan out for them. I don't know what is going to happen and how it's going to actually play out, but it simply means that PDP is hanging very slim on a thread based on the mistakes that they made since from their primary elections. And I'm hoping that they can actually control or take care of it. Okay,
so now to a similar matter, we're seeing in Rivers State where Governor Wike himself is also telling Rivers indigents not to vote for anybody who does not have the interest of the state at heart. So don't you think it's sort of a replication, basically him trying to say or portray himself as the only person who knows what's best for the state, like we see.
I think Wike has never been a hypocrite about where he stands.
Okay.
He has been clear, he has been direct. He just needs to pussyfoot a little just so that it doesn't look like he's directly in contrast with the party. But we know that he's directly in contrast with the party. He has never been cowardly about it. So I think whatever it is that he says, of course we know who he's referring to, we know what he is referring to, we know what he's trying to control and all of that. So let's see how the politics just got very interesting. The only thing I just hope for is just that there should be a level playing field for everybody, because a healthy competition, as Obasanjo rightly stated in his letter, allows legitimacy for whoever it is that will win the general elections.
Okay, so the president reassured Nigerians in his New Year address, that 2023 election is going to be credible. Of course, we know this is his final New Year address to Nigerians as president. And there were a couple of, points to note in the speech. So first, I would like to ask you, what do you make of the address?
Well, the honest truth is sometimes I am forced to believe that the president has lost touch of the realities of Nigerians. The only thing I think is going to be, the only thing I think he has stand firm by, and he has actually thrown out actions, to back up his claim is the fact that he intends to leave a free and fair election. First things first, signing the Electoral Act in 2022 was one of the boldest, biggest steps that he took, which was a good one. The new CBN policy is also going to come in to help us curb vote buying, to help us curb illicit financial flow during election financing and all of that. So we are hoping that these things are properly implemented and followed to the letter as to the way they've been written, whether it's the policy or the act. So because obviously we've seen his countenance toward it. He has not gotten involved in the politics very openly. He's not even openly campaigning, despite being a party man. He has only attended one of the rallies, I think the one in Jos, some weeks ago. So he has said it, and I'm hoping that he can actually live up to it. He has not tried to influence the INEC chairman in any way. He has not even met with the INEC chairman. I don't think he has. If the man has spoken to the INEC chairman, it will be a news report, and he still hasn't done. So he has distanced himself from INEC and allowed INEC to take full control of this entire process, which is actually a good thing.
Exactly, because I was going to ask, don't you think that is the approach that he is supposed to take? Because, of course, he's an outgoing president, although many would say, he basically has nothing to lose in the forthcoming election because he's not on the ballot. But, however, don't you think this is the best approach to take, because he would not want to exert so much influence as past leaders have done?
We need to understand that beyond him being a leader of a country, he's also a party man. In politics, anywhere in the world, the sitting president campaigns for the next person coming in. That's the way party politics work. But he has this. Of course, we know that
he's been following some of the campaign activities.
The only one he followed was he hasn't. He has only attended out of Jos,
right?
Yes, that's the only one he has attended physically.
The flag off.
Just the flag off. But he has not been anywhere else. He has distanced himself even from the party and has ensured that he has promised that he's going to, which is a good thing. I'm not a party man, of course, so I'm going to say that's a good thing for all of us because we know what it means to be a sitting president who is openly speaking up for a particular candidate. So that is going to carry up because he's a mandate that has been tested and trusted because it has delivered twice for him. So that means if he moves that mandate to anybody else specifically, even if it's not all of the mandate that will move with him, significant number is going to actually move to whoever it is that he endorses publicly, and he has refused to do that. So we need to actually understand that this man is also a party man, even as he is the president of the country.
Okay, let's now go to the front page of the Nation newspaper. There's a story saying the Auditor General report is reporting that 17.877 million barrels of crude oil were exported without records. And the same story, from the same report, is also accusing the Accountant General of paying 73 billion naira without approval. When do you see an end to this issue? This oil theft, as the saying goes, it has gone to industrial scale. 17 million barrels is not.
You know what? I've seen a ship. I've been fortunate to see a ship firsthand that actually ships oil. I was at the Suez Canal, and a big ship that was shipping oil passed. So we're in the water, of course, and then we saw it going. You cannot tell me that 17 million barrels just went missing without us. A ship that can, if you put Daily Trust, the whole of this building, in a landscape, it's still not up to the size of a ship carrying oil.
Interesting.
It is not up to the size. Like with this high and the same length of being high, put it flat, it's still not up to that size of a ship carrying oil. So you cannot tell me that 17 million just goes missing without record. We didn't know where it passed. Like, I don't understand.
So you're saying it's probably a conspiracy?
Of course it is. We know these things. Of course it is a conspiracy. It doesn't make sense. I've always said this before, and I will reiterate. When things like this happen, if the government knows, it says a lot about their position in the country. If they do not know, it says a lot about their nonchalance about the situation of the country. It is really appalling. Things like this should not be news. It is pathetic that we have to discuss these kind of things. Like you're telling me 17 million barrels of oil. We are not stupid in the country, for the love of God. Well,
hopefully the authorities are also listening and would do something about it.
Hopefully.
However, this is the much we can take on the newspaper review this morning. Mukhtar Suleiman, public commentator, thank you so much for coming on the program, and also Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Indeed. So we'll take a pause for now, and we'll be coming back at the top of the hour where we'll be bringing you more on the morning show. Do stay.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that